You're listening to the Pink Property Podcast, where each week we will discuss hot property topics, introduce you to members of our team as well as special guests, and let you know about all the things that are going on at David Lee. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Pink Property Podcast. Following on from our Meet the High Street season, we are here today with Paul Winspear, the Editor-in-Chief at Bishop Stortford Independent. So if anyone knows what's going on in and around Bishop Stortford, it's you, Paul. You've worked here for a long time, got a real good insight and feeling for the town. Thank you very much for letting us come and see you today.
You're welcome.
Firstly, I wanted to start about your history and background. Obviously, the paper's been running for some time and you were the previous paper. I just wanted to find out a bit about your story, really. So start us at the beginning of your sort of work journey.
Well, luckily I've got a very good memory, so I can remember that far back. February 1983, I first came to Bishop Stortford as a teenager, starting out on the bottom rung of the journalistic ladder. Thought I'd be here for a few years, and here we are almost 40 years later.
Amazing.
Still in the same building,
yes,
although under a different guise. But worked for the Herts and Essex Observer, edited, first editor's job was Harlow Star, then Hertfordshire Mercury, and then had the opportunity to edit the Herts and Essex Observer. Was made redundant from that title in 2016, along with my long-term news editor colleague Sinead Kaur. But a year later, we persuaded Iliff Media, a former owner of the Herts and Essex Observer, to follow what they'd done in Cambridge, where they'd launched a Cambridge Independent in 2016, to do the same in Bishop Stortford. By that time, the Herts and Essex Observer sadly had folded. Having been established in this building since 1861, the website disappeared. Bishop Stortford lost its local voice in terms of the local paper. So we launched in October 2017 and were greeted with open arms.
Definitely.
And so, but which immediately put a great level of expectation on us. We've enjoyed tremendous support and backing from the community in the 4 years and 4 months that we've been going now.
It's gone quick, isn't it, that 4 years? So in terms of your knowledge of Bishop Stortford and the involvement, you get to see a lot what's coming through, and the paper provides great insight to that. What excites you about the future of Bishop Stortford and what's coming? And probably in sort of 3 parts, really. Let's talk about the good. Tell me what you don't like, and the good, the bad, and the ugly.
I wouldn't say there's anything I don't like. I think there's always, there's mass development going on around Bishop Stortford. I think at one point we totted up that there are something like 4,500 houses or homes being built in all the various major developments, including Stortford North and the Goods Yard, Stortford South. And I think that's massive opportunity for everyone in Bishop Stortford, including us. It's an opportunity to connect more people and for businesses to prosper and flourish and thrive. Currently, there's a lot of development going on at the same time, which is presenting issues in terms of the infrastructure.
Yes.
Luckily, I've stopped driving just over 2 years ago because I live so close to the office and most of my life is in Bishop Stortford that it made sense not to have a car. So I think I'm kind of blessed with one of the least challenging commutes on foot into work. But we're aware from communications from emails and Facebook that a lot of people their patience is being tested at the moment by all the various roadworks, all planned, but then also on top of that there's the emergency utility actions as well. So but I think it's Bishop Stortford, I think it's pretty much like most other towns in that the high street's evolving. See a lot of comments recently. There's a lot of restaurant activity.
Yeah, I see that
in Bishop Stortford, especially in this street. And we're finding out that the restaurants are gradually getting closer to this building, which is good. We won't have to walk so far.
Yep.
Next door but one is the next one. But I think that's just symbolic of the evolution of the high street.
Changing place,
It's service led, and again, I think it's that if a shop has the right business model, it will flourish. And there's some great little independents in Bishop Stortford. Shops like we've got a Savile Row tailor in Bishop Stortford, Alexandra Wood and Fashion Flooring and Interiors have got 2 shops in the town.
I saw.
They sell brilliant stuff. Coco's, the chocolate shop, which is a kind of like a little hidden gem. Click, the photo shop. So, I think people generally are sort of don't put a lot of thought into the language they use when they post on Facebook. But I think there's a hell of a lot in this town for to be excited about and to continue to be excited about. And we never know what the future holds. So I think there's a lot of quite a few of the restaurant chains think highly enough of Bishop Stortford to invest.
Do you think it's a combination of that new development and increased population that's made it an attractive proposition for some of the brands that we haven't seen before here?
And it's an affluent area, and some of the restaurant chains, it's when they announce that they're coming to Bishop Stortford, you go onto their website and see where they've got branches already, and you can I think it's a feather in Stortford's cap to be in classed in the same sort of places as those where they already exist. So I think these people will know what they're doing. We saw it when Coat and Bills came. Unfortunately, Bills didn't survive the pandemic. But we'd heard locally that perhaps they didn't have their business model right, whereas right next door, those 2 businesses, those brands were inextricably linked at one stage. Coat has flourished, not just because of me, but I think there's a lot to be positive about. I mean, in terms of ugly, building sites tend to look ugly when they're going up. I live very near the Grange Paddocks Leisure Centre. That's been very interesting. I've walked past that many times in the duration of the construction. And it was fascinating to sort of see the artist's image on the hoardings, and then to see the real thing develop,
in real
and
life.
it looks exactly like it was.
And that's it's a big building, but it's not an ugly building in terms of what was there before and the evolution that's gone through.
I think it's an improvement, and it's not finished down there. So they're taking the old centre away. They're going to be putting a couple of pitches in, tennis courts as well. So
it's a great facility. And I suppose what could potentially be seen as the multi-story that's being put in at the moment at Northgate End is actually going to be facaded by a development which will hide that, won't it? Which is good.
And that's always been East Sussex Council's Kickstarter for the old River Lane development. So it'll be very exciting to see what emerges out the back of us here.
That population growth and the stoking to the economy, I think is going to be great. The plan of the broadcast and the series is to try and highlight some of those great local businesses that are here that people may or may not have heard of or may have never gone in through the door. So we'll be definitely keeping in touch with the people that you've mentioned and try to roll out and sort of spread the word of the great things that exist here. Obviously, you've worked tirelessly from the unfortunate collapse of the Arts and Letters Observer and over the last 4.5 years to build out the Independent. What's been some of the biggest challenges you've had in doing that?
I think the first challenge was the sort of weight of expectation when we announced, even before we'd started, that we were starting. And it's quite, we're very much, although we're part of a publishing group, iLift Media, which has titles stretching from the Kent Messenger Group all the way up to Inverness. Starting with a blank canvas was refreshing in a way, but also brought its challenges, and we just tried to sort of go back to basics in terms of having seen how the Hearts and Essex Observer had developed's probably the wrong word, but how its kind of content had morphed into more of a kind of generic regional content. It was obvious that people in Bishop Stortford were missing news and information about Bishop Stortford.
Sort of hyper-local.
So we did go down that hyper-local route to the extent that we didn't cover Stansted and Sawbridgeworth to start with. And historically, those of us who'd been involved in the Observer before, it's kind of second nature to think if a Stansted story comes in, we do it. So to say no to that.
Yeah.
But I think, we've enjoyed such tremendous support. I do remember when we started the sports section, and I wanted to sort of build that around the rugby club. The rugby club in Stortford performs at the highest national level out of all sports clubs in Bishop Stortford. Plays in a national league. So what I found really encouraging was the fact that that was the only conversation I had to have with a sports club.
Right.
Was to fill our sports pages, because all the other sports clubs in Bishop Stortford came to us and said, will you carry our reports?
Can we be there as well? Brilliant.
Having had been starved of publicity for quite some time before. And it's almost kind of like if you build it, they will come kind of thing. Field of dreams. But in terms of challenges, it's, we'd kind of got used to the fact that, when some of us started in this industry, it was, it was pre-digital era. The interaction with readers was restricted to them coming in or writing you a letter or ringing up. So by then we knew that we're not just a weekly publication and a paper of record, but also, in theory, a 24/7 breaking news online media service. So it's been a challenge increasingly. And then, of course, the pandemic came along. That has had an effect on us in terms of revenue. The wider group, certainly, Bishop Stortford seems to have been pretty buoyant throughout. Sales have taken a hit, but I think that's of the paper, but I think that's because the demographic who buy our paper tends to be more elderly and weren't going out as much. But the online audience continues to grow year on year. The pandemic was an issue, and that had an effect on resources, and we do have to be mindful of costs, probably more so now than at any time in our history. I think largely because our owner, Edward Iliff, wants to actually start to make a profit.
Right.
That's an issue. So we're having to sort of keep costs tight. I mean, we produce a smaller size newspaper than we previously did. Could be largely if those estate agents just came back to us. Guys,
get them
working on it.
And that, I suppose, is part of that digital type transformation that's happened in your own business now, in terms of how you're driving lots of activity through your online channels. So if we would say what does the future hold for Bishop Stortford Independent, maybe that's a good route now. What comes next for you guys? I think, well, with the sort of developments taking shape around us and in the pipeline, we'll continue to, I think, there is a balance to be struck between the paper, the print edition, and online, and as part of in effect a kind of a semi-national media group, there are initiatives being developed centrally which we will benefit from. We've got sort of revenue raising partnerships now with Google and Facebook, for example, as a newspaper group. So we're always kind of looking as that kind of national group, looking to increase revenue in that way. It's all about continuing to foster relationships, and I strongly and passionately believe in keeping a community connected. And it's giving publicity to the sorts of
events and initiatives, businesses, charities, community groups that give people a sense of feeling good about where they live, about a sense of feeling great about living in.
I suppose you've got a multiple approach to being able to do that now, because I know that your Facebook channel has massive following, a huge following there, obviously, as well as the main site for the Independent, as well as the physical edition. So it's sort of a three-pronged approach to that community building, isn't it?
It is very much that, And when we sort of offer that, we can sort of offer packages like that to, we're getting people looking to advertise with us, for the first time, continuously, which is really encouraging, and we are able to offer, something, a real sort of pick and mix.
That's good.
Selection.
Really good.
And as you say, Facebook is a key part of that, because we've got a big, I think getting on for 13,500 followers now.
Brilliant.
So it's a great way of, and Facebook works really well for us, because we can see that when we put a story online, when we put a link to that story on Facebook, it makes the audience spike.
Drives that traffic. That's
absolutely,
good. Brilliant.
But and the newspaper is is traditional and it's historic, and I think there's still a lot of kudos to having your name or photo in the paper.
In that paper.
And
absolutely.
I kind of I see it when people sort of tag friends in who might be unaware that they've appeared in the paper, and I see them tag them on Facebook, and they maybe sort of famous is a bit over the top, but
famous
and
to
certainly,
a few.
And the sports section, we've got 6 pages this week, loads of faces,
and that's great for that sporting community, because that is that famous to a few for a minute, and that's lovely recognition that they're getting for those hard efforts in what are amateur sports. And
I mean, but we do rely on this is sort of relationships with some of these organisations in the town and businesses. But the hockey club, for example, this week have finally kind of got their act together in terms of appointing one person to kind of collate match reports. Kind of been coverage has been really sporadic. The ladies' first 11 are doing really well and are on the verge of being promoted to a national league.
Oh, brilliant!
So they'll be joining the men's rugby team.
Yeah.
But this week's paper has got reports from 14 men's and women's teams.
Wow.
At Bishop Stortford. We've got 6 pages of sport in this week, because
lovely.
It's all, people still want us to cover them, and they want that, and part of that also is being a paper of record. So these are long-standing archives in the making as well.
Will hold on to them for a long time. Talking about sort of community, we were involved this year for the first time in your community awards, the Indies, which I must say was a fantastic event. We really enjoyed it. It was the first time we were able to be there. Was it the 4th year, or was it the 3rd event but the 4th year? Did we miss a year?
We missed a year. We had to postpone it in 2020. Where are we now? 22, aren't we? So we launched in 17. We had it in 18, 19, skipped a year. 21.
Brilliant.
So the third time.
And obviously, we really enjoyed it. Can you tell the audience a little bit more about the event and what your plans are for this year, for the 2022?
Yeah, I mean, it's a Bishop Stortford version of the Pride of Britain. So it's kind of like a Pride of Bishop Stortford and surrounding areas. And we invite nominations across a range of categories. It's to sort of acknowledge and honour the kind of unsung service that goes on, as well as sort of individual stories of courage and, in some cases, achievement, certainly in sport. And I think certainly the last year's event, because it was postponed because of the pandemic, we wanted to, acknowledge the efforts of some of the people who really, went the extra mile during the pandemic in 2020 and into 2021. It's a great feel-good occasion. I think it's always interesting to sort of see it from our perspective, because I think people go along not quite knowing what to expect, and sort of leave thinking, wow, that was probably a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
It was a really inspiring evening, and great to understand probably some of those stories, and kudos to you guys to being able to highlight those stories and recognise some of the things that went on there from both.
And I think that's the strength of the event, is that the strength of the event, I think, depends on the power of the stories. So although we invite nominations, we're also mindful of the fact that we know what makes a good event, what makes a good story, and therefore what makes a good event. We're very lucky to work with James Garrett of HNE Media, who also has that ability to, tell powerful stories through video, just like you, Jack.
Yeah, behind the camera. Good man.
But and I think, and for this year, it's, I think the approach will be, we've got a template for the event. It's a template that we carried forward from Herts and Essex Observer Days. They used to do community awards jointly with the Hertfordshire Mercury, but it's great to be able to do just a Stortford event. So this year's, we'll be looking to, have it mid-November again. Same number of categories. We'll be, contacting the sponsors to see if they want to renew sponsorship. Yes to renewing sponsorship.
What sort of time are you? When's that invite going on?
So,
and when will you be looking for the sort of nominees, and when does that process start in the year?
Well, what I want to do is, I'm mindful of the fact that I said I wanted to do this right at the start of the year, but I think what we want to do is sort of retell the stories in the paper, which we didn't do last year. We sort of covered the event photographically, but I think it'd be good to sort of get the stories out of the winners again.
Yes.
That gives the sponsors, another sort of chance to be, for their association to be highlighted as well. But I think it's worth, I think it's worth in print and online, in terms of articles, going into depth on some of the stories of these people.
Yeah, I agree.
And because all of them sort of do continue to serve.
Yes,
they'll be doing exactly the same job this year as they were last year and the year before.
And they were stories that should be told. So I think that would be really well received. I do.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, look, let me know when it comes out again, as we would like to be involved again.
Yeah,
we really enjoyed it last year, and thank
you
very much.
Send me a copy of that, please.
Jack's got video proof. It'll be on YouTube. But look, thank you very much for your time today, and thank you ever so much for tuning in this week, and I'll see you again next Sunday.
Watch the podcast every Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Get notified by hitting that subscribe button right now.